We have recently heard a lot of bombings in various parts of the country. The local inhabitants of that country, they deny that these bombs are staged or planted by them. They claim that these bombs are mostly planted by the Chinese agents just to use it as an excuse to crack on them, to arrest them, to torture them, and even execute them.
As you know, the leader of China, Deng Xiaoping, has died. How do you think this will affect the relations between China and the minorities in there?
We have hope, I would say, that the new leadership will change their attitude and start a dialogue with us people or with the representatives of our peoples to solve the problem through peaceful means, which would benefit us all sides.
There are ethnic brothers of your people in countries of Central Asia, also in Turkey, and they reacted the actions of Chinese government. How do you evaluate that?
The countrymen in Turkey reacted very strongly, and we have heard from news that they have staged several demonstrations in front of the Chinese consulate general here, and they have also demonstrated in Ankara in front of the Chinese embassy. I'm happy that these demonstrations were peaceful and not violent. Happy that they have remembered them and give them moral support.
Finally, Mr. Alptekin called for dialogue.
What we are trying to convince the Chinese leadership is, instead of trying to silence the demands of the people through ruthless measures, if they could start in dialogue with them, listen to their grievances, demands and desires, to settle the problem through peaceful means, through dialogue, for the benefit of all sides. Eastern Turkestan was an independent country. It was the most ancient land of the Turkic peoples as a whole. It was the cradle of all Turkic peoples. It was the center of Turkic culture and civilization, I would say. In literature, cultural area, Chinese are sinicizing the literary Uyghur language. Uyghur language is one of the most, respected, important language of the Ural-Altai group. It's a very ancient Turkic language. So they are now trying to systematically sinicize the Uyghur language. After September 11, suddenly the Chinese leaders discover terrorism in Eastern Turkestan and stages a worldwide campaign to brand Uyghurs as terrorists. They have been sending Chinese settlers into Eastern Turkestan. And before 1949, this was almost 300 Chinese. Now, according to official statistics, there's more than 7 million. And my countrymen believe that this population is now at least 15 to 20 million Chinese already in Eastern Turkestan.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear brothers and sisters from Tibet, Tashi direct to all of you. I am an Uyghur from Eastern Turkestan. On behalf of millions of Uyghurs, I am here to support your peaceful struggle for freedom. I am also very honored to be invited to be among you today. And this support for Tibet, I accept it also to the support for the people of Eastern Turkestan, Inner Mongolia, and for millions of Chinese people who are trying to overthrow the dictatorship and establish a democracy in that country. My dear friends, my dear Tibetan brothers and sisters, as you may know, the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and the Inner Mongols who had had a close political, cultural, and religious relationship for many centuries, are sharing the same destiny today. Today they are facing political oppression, cultural assimilation, economic exploitation, ecological destruction, and racial discrimination. Moreover, the population transfer, coercive birth control, and Sinization of the literary language are threatening the very existence of the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and the Inner Mongols. At present, the Chinese authorities have intensified their age-old policy of setting one ethnic, religious, linguistic group against the other. As a result, mutual hatred among the different ethnic, religious, and linguistic groups in Eastern Turkestan, Tibet, and Inner Mongolia have become very strong. It is said that the aim of provoking such ethnic, religious, and linguistic conflicts was to distract these groups, thus allowing the Chinese authorities a free hand to act as they please. The continued treatment of the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and the Inner Mongols as Yaman, meaning barbarian, dirty, backward, and primitive by the great majority of the common Chinese people have deepened the hostilities between the common Chinese people and the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and the Inner Mongols. The great majority of the common Chinese people are unaware of the fact that the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and the Mongols have a rich history, culture, and civilization at least as advanced as China's. These policies have turned Eastern Turkestan, Tibet, and Inner Mongolia into a time bomb. At present, the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, and the Inner Mongols are forced to choose between national extinction or gradual assimilation and a mortal struggle to defend their cultural identity. Many experts believe that if a major conflict breaks out in Eastern Turkestan, Tibet, or Inner Mongolia, it will not only lead to self-destruction, but at the same time it could spread into neighboring countries, thereby destabilizing the peace in Central Asia as a whole. Rather than seeking to reduce tensions through constructive dialogue with the representatives of the peoples of Eastern Turkestan, Tibet, or Inner Mongolia over their political, cultural, and economic demands, Chinese government is seeking to silence them with ruthless repression and thereby intensifying the present tensions even more. Continued ruthless repression could lead to intensification of violence. Through ruthless measures, people's demand for democracy, justice, and self-determination cannot be silenced. Human beings cannot endure oppression forever. Every patience has an end. History is the best proof that such oppressive systems are not everlasting. The first step to diffuse tension is dialogue. We have a nice proverb in Eastern Turkestan among Uyghurs, which says, dogs by smelling each other, human beings by talking to each other can come closer. Through ruthless measures, I would say dialogue is the foundation. It is also the foundation for better understanding, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence. Trust cannot develop without dialogue, and there could be no peaceful change without trust. Today, dialogue between the Chinese government, the Chinese people, the Eastern Turkestanis, the Tibetans, and the Inner Mongols have become vitally important than ever. Thus, in order to defuse the rising tension in Eastern Turkestan, Tibet and Inner Mongolia, to prevent a probable major conflict and lay the foundation for future relationship, I would humbly like to call upon the international community to stage a worldwide campaign to influence, persuade, and convince the Chinese leadership to start a dialogue with the government in exile of the Tibetan people. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the government in exile of the Tibetan people have offered negotiations with the Chinese government in order to end their dispute with China. But until now, Chinese government has rejected these offers. The international community must make the Chinese government realize that by avoiding problems, problems will not go away. The only way to resolve problems is dialogue. A settlement through dialogue between the Chinese government and the government in exile of the Tibetan people will furthermore have strong positive impact not only on the peoples of Eastern Turkestan and Inner Mongolia, but also on the peoples of Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. It is not in the interest of the international community that the Chinese government, the Chinese people, the peoples of Eastern Turkestan, Tibet, and Inner Mongolia to see another major conflict erupt. The international community must reverse the general feeling among the world's oppressed that their voice can only be heard only when amplified by methods of international terrorism. The democratic-minded Chinese people living abroad must stage a worldwide campaign to pressure the Chinese leadership to start negotiations with the government in exile of the Tibetan people. The international support is always appreciated, but Deng Xiaoping, the late paramount leader of China, said the more pressure from abroad is the best proof that we are doing our job correctly at home. But he is dead now. Thus, the Chinese government might ignore the international pressure, but they cannot totally ignore a massive pressure which comes from their own people. Such a support will be perceived by the peoples of Eastern Turkestan, the Tibet and Inner Mongols and other non-Chinese peoples in China, that the democratic-minded Chinese people are not only striving for a democratic China, but at the same time that they are respect the basic rights of the Chinese peoples who are struggling for recognition, greater autonomy, or self-determination. It will also help deplete the hostilities among our peoples at home and set a good example for our future relationship. For instance, a great majority of the Uyghur students at home did not support the Chinese student demonstration in Tiananmen. When asked why, the answer was that this was only a Chinese internal matter. They would not support such activities because the Chinese students who are demanding democracy from the central government never support the Uyghur cause. Only one way or the other, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear brothers from Tibet, Eastern Turkestan, Tibet, and Inner Mongolia will become independent, whether the world wants or not, whether the Chinese government wants or not. We will be independent one day. We will have to live with another. We will have to be neighbors with another. Thus, in order to lay the foundation for our future relationship, we have the responsibility to strengthen the mutual understanding, cooperation, and solidarity among our peoples now. This is the time. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, we are all members of the same family, and unless we develop a sense of universal responsibility and learn to see each other as brothers and sisters, there can never be world peace. We have to develop the sense of responsibility now, ladies and gentlemen, before it gets too late. I would like to join at the end of my speech Mr. Verne, who said next year we will be in Lhasa, free Tibet. I would like to say next year let's celebrate our independence in Lhasa, not only in Lhasa, in Urumqi, in Inner Mongolia, and also in China. Long live the just cause of the Tibetan people. Long live the just cause of the Eastern Turkestani people. Long live the just cause of the Inner Mongolian people. Thank you.